Thank you, Ruth. So good morning, everybody. As Ruth says, I'm Jane Skelton. I'm the UK Innovation Director for Smurfit Kappa. So Smurfit Kappa are a global paper and corrugated packaging business. We also recycle, so we run a fully circular business model. I've been in role about 18 months now. So my team use design and technologies in order to be able to innovate and think differently for our customers. Previously, I've worked in retail, so I spent most of my career working in packaging teams and in senior packaging roles in various UK retailers. And I've also spent a bit of time consulting as well, so doing a couple of years consulting with brands to make sure that their packaging is safe, legal, and sustainable. And throughout my career, I have spent some time liaising with and consulting with both government and NGOs. But always very passionate about packaging. So let's kick off. So I'm going to start with what I call the timeline of influence and impact that we've had in terms of us as packaging professionals. So to take your minds back to 2005, if you happen to be working in the industry, you might remember all sorts of TV programs like Breakfast TV and The One Show, etc., talking about packaging waste and showing pizzas being pulled apart and why we got all this packaging. So the Quartile commitment was born by WRAP in order to be able to remove as much packaging waste out of the households. That then grew from food waste and supply chain waste. So as packaging professionals, we had to start to look much deeper. And actually, as food and beverage manufacturers, we had to start to think about, are we protecting the food as much as possible? And are we looking at our supply chains properly? That then moved into the overall impact of carbon and water management. And actually, even though I've only shown these three today, the Quartile commitment's still live today and has still got huge targets related to sustainability targets up to 2030. So as a packaging professional, if you were happily working away on Quartile commitment, and then in 2016, the UN set out their sustainability goals. So the equitable sustainability future. And that didn't just focus on food waste. It focused on a lot more around equality and poverty and hunger and much more stretching, which you'll find a lot of businesses have aligned their own sustainability targets to in today's world, like ourselves. Then came the big hit. So probably all remember it on the 29th of October 2017, or you may or may not remember it, I certainly do. David Attenborough did his Blue Planet 2 show showing how much devastation that the environment was taking on from plastic waste, particularly to some wildlife, which saddened us all. And I can say actually between 2016 and 2017, in fact, there was a hot summer in 2017. There was already a lot of noise in the press and certainly within the industry about the danger or the damage that black plastic was doing, that black plastic wasn't recyclable. So there was an awful lot of discussions going on. And as packagers, I remember having lots of discussions with colleagues of mine and peers about the fact that the black plastic was just the tip of the iceberg. And we had this, pardon the pun, but a huge tsunami of consumer pressure and issues coming our way when it came to plastic. And that happened on the 29th of October. So what did that do? What that did is it then led us to all wake up, I suppose, much more than usual. So the plastic pack came along, so to eliminate, become recyclable, reuse, compostable, and include recycled content. And actually what that meant was most businesses now have their own sustainability targets. So Smurfit Kappa ourselves is our Better Planet Packaging sustainability program. And that's, what did it do? Well, it increased awareness, and certainly when you work in a packaging team in a large brand or a retail, you're quite often quite a small team. So there was some support. It changed behaviour both in businesses and in the home. Massive shift in consumer attitude, retailer and brand response, huge response, and then an industry-wide impact, including the wake up of government. But I'll come on to that in a minute. So that's our timeline of influence. What are the consumers saying? So here's some data from Euromonitor. So consumer attitudes towards sustainability in 2024. They are worried about climate change. They try to have a positive impact on the environment through everyday actions. They feel they can make a difference by the choices that they make. and a bit lower down the scale is that they're involved in political and social issues. So most of it is more about that they're worried about it. So the sort of 60s and 50s and 60s%, they're worried about climate change. They tried to make a positive impact. And quite low down on the scale is buying eco-conscious and ethically conscious products make them feel good, just over 20% there. However, 74% of companies indicate that it's important to them. 64% are really feeling that pressure from the consumers. And if you work for a brand or a retailer, you probably feel that pressure. And that 61% have sustainability strategies in place. So we still have a bit of a way to go at 61%. We could be pushing a bit more. Some data from Mintel. What's the most sustainability related? What's the most appealing to consumers? So they really like wonky veg because they really like that. For them, they can feel it, they can see it. They're like, hang on a minute, this was before used in animal feed or it got wasted. So now I'm able to use this product. Plastic, still the demon. I'm not a demonizer of plastic, by the way, nor are we at Smurfit Kappa in general. There is a place for it, but consumers definitely see that this is something they just don't want to see. And same percentage for recyclable or compostable packaging, being sourced in the UK or being sourced locally to them, and then supporting nature conservation. So are we protecting biodiversity? So they're kind of the key things around the claims that mean a lot to consumers. In terms of behaviours, so this one I find quite interesting at the top. So promotions on sustainable food and drink would encourage me to buy products. Not me, encourage consumers to buy products. I kind of sit on the fence with this one because buy one, get one frees were removed out of retailers because of the increase that they would give in food waste. So there's got to have different types of promotions probably on sustainable foods. I suppose what that's saying is it's more about being cost effective rather than promotions. It also says that they are buying sustainability, makes them feel good. So it's really getting into the hearts and minds of consumers. However, the cost of living rises is making it more difficult for them. It's dropping down their priority list, but it is still really important. In terms of attitudes towards sustainability in food, so traffic light system, they think might work well. I mean, 59% of them. So if you think about the traffic light system that was applied to our packaging back in the early to mid noughties, and that was the traffic light system related to from a health point of view. So how much percentage of sugar and salt and fats were in products so that consumers could make a choice. And actually, not necessarily a particularly bad idea. I'm not sure how it would work in practice, but there is some sort of call to action, like helping make a choice about sustainability. Packaging free items also high on the agenda, and I'll come on to that later. And then 51% saying that kind of mark of trust, so external certification. So not only buying into brands that they believe in, but is there an external certification where it's saying this product has been produced sustainably? I'm going to move on. So what have businesses done about that? So in terms of climate related actions, so recycling really high up there. And I suppose that's where we've made a big move to make packaging recyclable. And also you might have seen that DEFRA have announced this week, or was it the end of last week, about their simple recyclability scheme, about pushing that through to the, particularly in the UK, where we do have inconsistencies with recycling infrastructure, that they're working hard to try and resolve that as part of their extended producer responsibility programme. What else in terms of the businesses is improving their energy efficiency. So from my point of view, that's removing costs, being more efficient in production, optimizing energy use, using sustainable packaging, and switching to renewable energies and reducing waste, etc. And then quite lower down the list, but supporting suppliers to decrease their own emissions. And I see this driving forwards, actually, that the more and more that we all work together on the same sort of sustainability targets, then we'll all go on that journey together. So if you think about the timeline of impact and influence, that's what the consumer's saying, is how businesses are reacting. What's that done to government? What's that done to legislation? Well, it's woken up, and it's woken up on a big style. And again, if you've worked in this industry for many years, you'll remember that we've had directives and guidelines, so the Packaging Waste Directive that's now being looked at as legislation. So more and more going from guidance to actually this is a hard and fast rule. So I'm just going to briefly take you through what the EU's done. So in terms of their Green Deal, so a wide set of legislation and regulations which are targeted towards being climate neutral, fully circular and inclusive. And that's to reduce the amount of energy we're taking and resources that we're taking from the environment and making sure that it's not being leaked into the environment. So climate neutral being a really big push. What does that mean for us though? What does that mean for the packaging industry? So as I've just said, we'll need to become climate neutral during all cycles of packaging. So where it's being reused, recycled, absolutely no leakage into the environment at all. When it comes to its natural end, so when it has to disappear, it must disappear completely. So if it does happen to end up in the environment, it can't leave any traces behind. No microplastics, nothing, no chemicals left behind. And no pollution from packaging waste. So when it's being wasted through recycling systems, and absolutely no exports at all. So we're looking at a 3-step roadmap, actually, and I don't just think this is a Smurfit Kappa push. Actually, we should all, as an industry, be working together, a kind of a roadmap. So if you think about today's economy, we're linear. We're very linear, kind of, we bring stuff in, buy ingredients, buy materials, then we make things out of it, and then it gets wasted through the supply. So how can we, what's our 3-step roadmap? Reduce the problem. So design it. So design with the end in mind, design it to be circular. This is where innovation comes in, and really be fit for purpose. And I know that certainly along my career of 20+ years, sometimes you've had to make compromises, but actually this is about reducing that problem completely and making it circular by design. Limiting the problem, so making it circular by humans, so making sure that it can be recycled, making sure that it's really easy for them to recycle monomaterials, and then an infrastructure that works. And actually also can start with you as a person. So, you know, if you're traveling around, it's been a hot day, you've had a bottle of water in your handbags and you didn't bring your reusable one, so you happen to have bought a plastic bottle because you're a bit naughty but you're really thirsty. Don't throw it in the general waste bin, you know, take it home, recycle it, or find a recycling bin. So trying to make it start with yourself as well. And then solving the problem, so making sure that the resources that we extract from the biosphere are to be restored, and that anything that disappears back in does not contaminate. Then a bit closer to home, what's happening with extended producer responsibility? So the reason I've used this image is it's all about data. It's about knowledge, because data is knowledge, about understanding what we're buying, what we're producing, where's it going. What is EPR? Well, it's a strategy that is, it's to create all of the estimated environmental costs associated with the product throughout its product life cycle. And if you're heavily involved in this, you know that you should know where you sit in the supply chain. If you're a producer, so you're responsible for making that decision about packaging, then you are responsible for making sure that you're using the most sustainable packaging materials possible. And who's obligated? Well, you're obligated if you've got a UK annual turnover of $1 million plus. You've got a physical presence in the UK, and that can be on shelves, online, on social media, and that you handle more than 25 tons of packaging or packaging materials. Now, the current process, the current system in place is that baseline is 50 tons of packaging. So you can see that we're moving down, and there could be a future where it keeps going down and down and down. And anybody that puts a brand on the market will be responsible for making sure we're obligated to pay these costs. Labelling is really key as part of this as well. So all packaging has to be labelled, not just the one that goes home to the consumer, shipment packaging. So the outer cases, anything that like product is packed in must hold some sort of recycling label. At the moment, the directive is that it must hold the Recycle Now mark, which you'll see either on the back of your packaging, or on you'll see it on your recycling bins at home. And it must also use the words recycle or do not recycle. They're driving consistency. So producers could choose to subscribe to a labelling scheme. So the OPRL is the UK's only labelling scheme at the moment. But brand owners, they must label their packaging. If you're a distributor, so if you create packaging that's produced for small businesses, it is your responsibility to make sure that you have labelled the packaging and you're also obligated to its costs. And all these packaging types must be labelled by the 31st of March 2026. Now, I have mixed opinions on this. Lots of people, I've heard lots of people saying, oh, that's not enough time, but this has been in consultation for quite some years now. So it's, you know, we have to move forward. We have to make change. So that's what's woken up legislation. So there's all sorts going on. And we're already making big waves, either as individuals within our own businesses or collaboratively with customers and suppliers, etc., etc. But I'm just going to take you through a couple of case studies. I'll start with some Smurfit Kappa case studies. So this one, you might have all seen it on supermarket shelves. So we had a challenge. The challenge was to innovate in a category that had not seen any change in many, many years. So on the left there, you've got the big multi-pack. So 24 bags of crisps inside a bag, then put into a box. And what the team here at Smurfit Kappa did is take away one of those layers, take away that outer layer, that bag that goes on the shelf, and just go direct to a case. What did that give us, or what did that give Walkers? 250 tons of virgin plastic removed. Because obviously flexible plastic's quite lightweight, but still an awful lot of virgin plastic removed out of the waste stream completely. Moved to 100% recyclable packaging. Actually, a greater pallet fill and a much quicker speed on the line, on the packing line, which to begin with, I think the whole team were, you know, you move from something as quick as a flow wrap to a box, it's going to slow down the process, but actually we saw the complete opposite. And then a reduction in CO2, so 53% reduction in CO2. Another case study here is in the, it's not in the food and beverage, but it is in the personal care sector. And that's where on the left here, you'll see some deodorant packs, so multi-component pack. We've got a heat tunnel involved. It's quite difficult to open the retailer, but incredibly sturdy, really efficient pack to go through the supply chain, but it is plastic. The outcut, and actually that pack did then often go in a bigger box, so several boxes. It's to move to a completely recyclable solution. So what did that do? 341 tons of plastic per year removed from the supply chain, 100% recyclable, less pallets, less trucks on the road, and a sustainably sourced material. What else is going on out there though? Because these are kind of, it's moving from one material to other, it's removing plastic. But I've had a look to see what else is going on in the market. Some interesting things. I'm going to start with what's in the middle there. So removing plastic out of the produce sector in particular and moving it into cardboard actually increases shelf life in some cases. So here's two examples. Tomatoes and mushrooms quite like to be in cardboard. It stops the production of mold, but other fruits and vegetables, not so much. So there's some great work going on in this place. Then there's some other more niche things. On the left there, you've got a paper-based bottle. So it's 57% paper with a plastic barrier because it's got liquid in it. So you do still need to have plastic. And that's happened in Sweden. There are other Volker brands actually that have come out with this paper bottle, and I've seen it in quite a few places. The one on the right I found particularly interested because it's not actually about sustainable packaging. It's about, even though glass is sustainable, obviously, it's about what they've used to create their product. So it's a small batch gin. It's a craft product. It's quite niche. It's made in India. And it's made from it's made from willow wood, from cricket bats, used cricket bats, and they've made vats out of them to then distill their gin. So if you just think about this product on your mind when I come to my last slide, but I think this is really interesting and it's a niche way of looking at things. I'm now going to move on to insulation because I did say in the LinkedIn post that I was going to talk to you a little bit about insulation. So this is the evolution, or what we see as the evolution of insulation. So products. mainly through a supply chain that goes into back of stores, but also increasingly so in the e-commerce sector. So typically on the left, you've got a plastic EPS box, which is incredibly efficient what it does, keeps the product chilled for a significant amount of time, and even traveling all over the world. What you've seen quite a lot of brands move to is the packaging in the middle. It's a bit of a hybrid, really. So you've got a corrugated box, you've got this recyclable piece of packaging at the curbside, but still has to have that insulation layer, which can be made from a variety of different materials. And then on the right, you've got a fully corrugated solution, and I'll just take you through how we got there. So our inspiration was that EPS and any kind of insulation, inner, denim, wool, hemp, none of them were recyclable at the curbside. So this increase with consumer products being shipped in this type of packaging, could we have a corrugated solution? And one of the designers in the team got his inspiration actually from the jacket at the bottom. So if you ever meet him, most of the winter he likes to wear this jacket, but he got his inspiration from that coat, thinking, well, how does that work? And also looking at how, when we insulate our houses, how does that work? Well, very similar to how corrugated packaging works. You've got the insulation layer, so you've got the gaps, the holes, which creates this insulation, which was our evolution and our inspiration into this type of packaging. So what can you do? What can you do in your business, in your job role, in your consultancy, however it is that you're working in this professional environment? I say the simple, but the answer is innovate, think differently. So we've all been working towards reduce, reuse, recycle for many years. We're used to it, reducing our layers, reducing the amount of packaging, reducing the weight, which has had its challenges, reducing our carbon impact, reducing everything, looking at reuse where possible, and obviously making things recyclable and creating a better recycling infrastructure and creating more information for consumers on how to recycle. But if you move from the 3 R's to the 7 R's, you can start to innovate and think differently. So start with rethinking where you currently are. Refuse some things, just say, no, you know what, we're not going to use that type of material anymore because it's not sustainable. Continue to reduce, continue to reuse, look at repurpose. So where can packaging be repurposed? So, I mentioned the gym bottle where there was cricket bats then being turned into bats that the gym was then matured in. I don't think that's the right word, but the gym was then produced in. That's a classic case of repurpose. And repurpose, so from one industry to another. So how can we start to rethink and go, what do I have in my supply chain, in my stream that is my class as waste that could be used by someone else's resource? Continue with recycle. Where can we repair things? And then rot, not particularly nice word, but make things compostable. Don't leave behind that impact. Now, I wanted to put this slide up because quite often when we talk about, innovating and change, particularly either in your own role or if you've been working with the same type of product for so long, you can kind of get stuck in a rut and how things work, and it's going to cost me more, or you might be coming up against challenges either with your suppliers or with your own customers within your own business. So this is a really interesting way of looking at things, that actually if you continue to just look at your beliefs, what you know about your current challenges, if you stay in that place, it's a pretty foolish place to stay, and it means that you're just going to keep coming across the same problems and having the same issues over and over again. Where most of us sit is that we sit with our beliefs because we know what we know, and then we've got some new facts, we've got new data, new information, and that piece is often overvalued, and it's where we sit really comfortably. We're going, yes, I know all of this, I'm brilliant, I've got some new facts and data, which means I can sit comfortably in the middle, but it is overvalued. If you go more towards the left, collect more data, more information, that's where that's where we're going to start to untap some real change. So ultimately, true sustainability is thinking end to end. It's not just meeting one target. It's not just I've made it recyclable. It's a true end to end. So working with suppliers, the production processes, the products that we deliver to customers, or the products that you deliver to customers, and always strive to make a big difference to the environment, people, and communities. That's where true sustainability is going to take and actually unlock value. And I'm just going to end with this image to say, where can we reframe the term waste? How can we make waste someone else's resource? So think about that gin brand. What can we do as professionals to make a big difference and really truly work towards a circular economy? So thank you. Have time for questions.
Thanks, Jane. I've got a couple of questions.
Yeah.
And the first one is, do you feel that government, who has set the sustainability goals, is actually providing enough support in terms of infrastructure to enable suppliers to address sustainability goals? So, for example, recycling of plastic kegs. The kegs are made of a recyclable material, but the UK has no recyclability, for them, and they have to be shipped to Holland to be recycled. So it's okay setting goals, but you need an infrastructure.
I totally agree. Do I think that government is doing all they can? I think that's a dangerous question to answer in this kind of domain in terms of governments. But I do. That is what the extended producer responsibility process or system is designed to do, is to create those end markets. So whoever has asked that particular question, I would highly recommend looking into the DEFRA EPR website, because they are pushing towards trying to, all those funds that are going to be coming from the producers, their obligated costs, which are 10 to 20 times more than they're paying now, is going to be used to create those recycling infrastructures.
And the question was for me, because it's a particular issue we have in the brewing industry in terms of recyclable plastic kegs. There is no facility within the UK to actually recycle them. So hopefully there may be in the future.
Hopefully there may be in the future. And I would question them and push them and say, what are you doing about this specific problem that we've got? Because I think the moment they are focusing on consumer-led challenges. So, flexible plastics, et cetera, to make that as easy as possible. But if we need to push more from an industry point of view, then I would say, yeah, push them and ask them.
And another question for smaller companies, is there a template that they can access that sort of checks that they're not passing the unsustainability along the chain? Because as you say, it's circular, and one piece of sustainable packaging or a sustainable product within the chain may pass the sustainability onto another. Is there a sustainability index within the supply chain?
That's a brilliant question. I can't, off the top of my head, I can't think of one place to go. I know in terms of to understand where you're obligated with EPR to choose the most sustainable packaging, there is a checklist. But what I would say to any smaller businesses, talk to your packaging supplier and ask all the questions you can. Ask why are we using this material? Where's it going to end up? Upskill yourself in terms of what isn't recyclable within the UK on a higher level. So the on-pack recycling label will give you all of that information. You do have to join, so there is a member's fee, but you can get that level of information. But my advice to smaller businesses, work with your packaging supplier, because they will have experts that can help you.
Brilliant. And then, of course, the big one, everybody wants to be sustainable. I don't think there's anybody in this country that does not want to achieve sustainability, but sometimes you have to match that against financials. So how do you manage if sustainability costs more?
I would say you need to look at the entire value. So this slide's actually quite good to have up. So look at the true value chain analysis end to end. Because where a material, so a sustainable material, may cost you more money, you may be able to unlock some value somewhere else in the supply chain. And that could be from manufacturing process. It could be right at the end in the retailer sector. It could be easier to replenish. It's about creating collaborative partnerships. so that you can unlock shared value together, and make sure, therefore, that you're all as profitable as each other. Because the term sustainability isn't just about, you know, packaging or products or materials. It's about survival. So sustainability is also means cost effective. And, you know, even going back to when we were doing packaging reduction targets, where you're reducing the layers of packaging, you're often reducing the costs. So I would also look at things end to end, do proper value chain analysis, and see where you can unlock the cost somewhere else to invest in the right place.
Great, thank you. I've dominated the questions. So has anybody else got a question they'd like to ask?
I have one. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, Jane. Andrew here. How you doing?
Hi, Andrew.
Hi. I liked your Walker's example. But of course, the Walker's crisp packets are notorious for being unrecyclable themselves, although I understand they're now registered with OPRL, and they have a scheme for collection, I think, at supermarkets. So
Yeah.
my question is that if the packaging guys make an effort at their end, and I'm assuming in getting rid of that plastic layer, there was no reduction in tampering or increase in tampering or reduction in damages to the product. You didn't mention anything about the quality side.
Yeah.
Then how much does that push the brand owner to do something to their end product, which is maybe the main bad guy in this whole process? Do packaging manufacturers have any, you know, if they're making this good part of the story, do they have any influence on the brand owners to get their act together as well? Otherwise, it's only part of the story.
I mean, I wouldn't call them the bad guys. I'd say that
In
our
this
approach.
instance. Sorry.
All right. I would say our approach is about collaboration, total collaboration through the supply chain, and that's where you unlock the best amount of value. So understanding, so as a packaging supplier, understanding the pain that the customer's having, and then also the pain down the supply chain to say, well, actually, what are we trying to solve here? Because what you don't want is any unintended consequences. So you don't want to make a massive change from one packaging type to another. You know, here's a good, like moving from some plastics into cardboard and paper products can actually decrease your shelf life. That would, for me, would be the wrong move, and it's not a collaborative approach. So for me, I wouldn't necessarily call them the bad guys. I would say most of the big brands now have got some really heavy hitting sustainability targets, which we support and work with them on. So for me, it's pure collaboration.
Thank you. Any other questions? Well, there's nothing on the chat, Jane, so...
Give people 10 minutes back.
Yes.
Get a coffee before your 9 o'clock meeting.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, well, thank you, everybody, for joining, and thank you, Jane.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jane.
Thank you.